Welcome to the 21 Convention podcast. I'm Steve Maeda and I'm your host of today's episode. And today we got fitness expert, Paleo revolutionary, 21 Convention speaker alumni, Keith Norris. And man, Keith is an amazing guy. I know him real well, personal friend of mine. I've worked out with him. I actually met him in 2010 before he was the speaker at the convention when Anthony Johnson came to Austin, Texas to work out on a very specific machinery called the ARX Fit. It was one of the first versions of it. And actually, funny enough, the day we recorded this was the day before Keith was going to talk with NASA about using the ARX Fit in space for NASA's astronauts to work out when they were orbiting around, the universe. In any case, man, just such an amazing guy. What we actually talk about on this podcast is actually, to me, far more interesting. Not only is it about the typical fitness stuff, about gaining muscle, hitting your peak performance, losing fat, but it's about living a new way of life. Now, Keith is the founder of PaleoFX. If you haven't heard of it, go to paleofx.com. It's actually an event that is the defining Paleo conference in the world. And it's coming up here April 2015, towards the end of the month. I'll be there. Over 100 Paleo speakers are going to be there. Anybody who's anybody in that world, whether that has to do with diet, exercise, even going into meditation, different ways of life, building different communities. Man, they're going to be there, and it's just an ultimate meeting of the minds, an ultimate networking of a true belief that can change you. And what we're talking about here on this podcast is how not only can we learn a different way to eat, a different way to use our bodies, but a different way to think, a different way to socialize, so that, man, you could hit your maximum potential and be what you were truly born to be. Man, you will not be disappointed in this. So check it out. Leave a comment down below, subscribe to our channel, and get involved with the dialogue that we're building here at the 21 Convention. And of course, don't forget to check out the 21convention.com. Check out the university that we've got going on there, the different webinars that we have, the different speeches coming up, and get yourself involved with this dialogue to be the ideal man.
Hey, here I am with Keith Norris. Man, I don't even know where to begin with you. You're a part of Efficient Exercise in Austin, which is an amazing thing to talk about, ARX Fit, but PaleoFX is coming up here around the corner, and that is something that you put together how many years ago?
This will be the fourth iteration of it, yeah.
Man, an amazing thing. I remember you guys talking about the first one, and Anthony coming out, actually.
Yeah, he was there for sure. He helped us out quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, and he always talks about this, and this is another thing that surely we'll talk about, but that's how he got his ARX Fit. And so he has one of the ones that's discontinued, one of the home versions of this amazing machine that Mark Alexander spoke about on his podcast with the 21 Convention, but also I'm sure we'll get into. So what's going on, man? Tell me what's happening with you.
Well, I'm getting ready to fly out to Pensacola tomorrow morning. Going to be talking at the IHMC, which is a contract branch for NASA and DARPA. And we're going to be talking about training astronauts in zero gravity conditions. So that's going to be a super, super cool conference.
Man, I got to ask, how did you come into contact with those people? Because that just sounds like such a particular, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, well, it just so happens that the CEO of IHMC was at the Ancestral Health Symposium in Berkeley over the summer, and he heard me talk about training astronauts in space, and he was like, what is this piece of equipment that you're talking about, this ARX piece of equipment? So that kind of kicked the whole thing off. He invited Mark and I to come out a few months ago, out to the compound. And so we went out there and got to look around at some of the absolutely crazy innovations that are going on in space flight. It's mind-boggling what these guys are doing. Wow. And to be a couple meatheads out there walking around and actually having a piece of equipment that they could put to use potentially, in a prolonged space flight to Mars. So the big drawback and the big hurdle in getting astronauts to Mars is getting them there strong enough to be able to do something while they're actually at Mars. Because the first crews that go up are going to have to do some physical labor. And yes, it's going to be, a little less gravitational pull on them. But if you look at the science of how beat up these guys are after 6 months in zero gravity conditions with the training that they do right now, which is highly, highly inadequate, they're not going to be able to do anything once they get there.
Man.
So this is the major hurdle. This is a major hurdle to exploration of Mars and beyond. So.
It's crazy, just to talk about space for a second. I know a guy that went to space. I mean, I don't know him well, but I basically was invited on one of his yachts. But he's the guy that started Cirque du Soleil Guy, and he paid. He was a space tourist, but he did it through the Soviets.
Sure. And
his training was insane.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, I forget the amount of money, but it was like this huge amount of millions of dollars or something that we couldn't even comprehend. And it was non-refundable. So basically, if he didn't pass his physical at the end, it was like, well, you're not going. If he was sick, if there's one thing off,
sure,
he made it up there, and he said it was like one of the most surreal things. But his training was insane to go up there. Now he wasn't up for long, but I imagine, God, the atrophy would be insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you talk to these guys who have been on the ISSN, that have been flying the International Space Station. You talk to guys that have been up there. There's a Canadian astronaut right now. I can't recall his name. He was on the Joe Rogan show not too long ago, which actually led me to start researching what it was that astronauts did, because he talked about what it was like upon re-entry into Earth's gravity. And he just said it was like an elephant sitting on his chest. He was just devastated. And he was weak, could barely move. Going up a flight of stairs after he got back was all that he could do. I mean, it's crippling. And these guys are training for up to 4 hours a day while they're in space, so here's the other element. They're training that long for results that are not there.
Yeah.
And let's face it, that's 4 hours that they could be otherwise employed doing serious research in space. But they can't, because they have to do something to keep some kind of anabolism going on. And anyway, I mean, that's a whole other topic we could spend hours on.
Yeah, totally. But
it's super interesting.
That's just so cool, because your backstory is you were an athlete. You pushed your body to the limit. You wanted to be bigger, stronger, faster. And, then you went off into real life career.
Yep.
You came back to fitness, and what you bring. Well, you guys have a really interesting team of guys. I mean, Skylar, he's a partner with you guys. He's bringing his own thing to the table. Mark Alexander, bringing his thing to the table. But what you're bringing to the table is actually very unique. And also what you started, which is the Paleo FX. Man, that's amazing. So you're one of these few guys. Well, there's a lot of people bringing technology to the table. But hands down, I think one of the fundamentals of what you believe in is get the body back to how we were made to be.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about that, and how that played into fitness and, your first introduction into paleo and what paleo's become and all that sort of stuff? I
mean, if you look at what we are as human beings and as a species, you have to look through an evolutionary lens, because what you cannot take away is the millions of years of evolution that it took to get us to where we are right now. Now, we live in an environment that's anything but Paleolithic, and that's good and it's bad. Okay, so there's two sides to that. Obviously, the fact that you and I are talking right now, utilizing technology, right? Even 15 years ago, this would have been right. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
But here we are sitting talking to each other, utilizing technology, and that's fantastic. That's a fantastic utilization of technology. But on the other hand, we've put ourselves in a position to where we can super highly refine carbohydrates to the point to where it is devastating to the human body. And we don't really realize it until the gig is up, right? Until you've got diabetes, until you've got heart disease, until you have Alzheimer's, which we're starting to show is a type 3 diabetes.
Wow.
So we have to look, if we're talking about human health, we have to look through an evolutionary lens to see what it is that the body requires for health. And what it is that absolutely wrecks the human body. Now, technology is an awesome tool used in the right way. So the whole thing of Paleo FX is, let's look through this evolutionary lens and see what we need, and let's leverage some modern technology to help us along the way. I mean, it's not like we turn our backs. We're not going back to the cave and spear. That's nobody in the paleo movement, or nobody in the upper crust of the paleo movement is saying that. That's not at all what we're saying. We're saying we're going to look through this evolutionary lens to see what the body needs to perform at a high level, and we are going to leverage technology to help us get there.
Yeah,
and that's essentially what the symposium is in a nutshell.
Yeah, man. This is interesting because paleo, for me, I'll tell you my story with it. And actually, I started when you recommended the diet to me. And I had met you back in 2009 or 2010, I forget. And that's when I first got introduced to the early models of the ARX machine. And just, 5 years ago, it's changed a lot dramatically. Yes, yeah. I'm sure. I mean, Mark was talking about it. I came in and saw you guys working out. I really can't wait to get working out on them again because there's nothing like them. But that all being said, I was working out like a madman from 15 to about 30. I didn't work out at all. So my body was really out of shape and just a lot of toxicity through lifestyle on top of that. But, man, when I started working out, it didn't matter what I did. I was probably doing it wrong. In fact, I know I was doing it wrong, but following kind of like a Bill Phillips thing or, a P90X thing and, stuff to get me through. And actually I'm grateful for it because it got me working out, but it wasn't necessarily the most efficient and best way to use actually what my body was made to be. But man, I could not lose weight. I could not lose that 10, 15 pounds. I could not feel healthy and I could not think healthy until I actually switched my diet. In a conversation I had with you the other day, and I want to hear more about this, you actually said fitness comes first, diet comes second.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I've always done fitness first, but diet was so necessary. So I always just thought like, well, if I changed my diet, I could move into, kind of a more optimal self. But you're saying something different here.
Yeah, I should have put a caveat to that. I should have said smart fitness comes first before diet, because there's a lot of wrong fitness ideas out there, and I think you know that. I know your audience knows that. There's a lot of harebrained ideas about what fitness is, and I think too there's a lot of misconceptions of that there is a difference between high level performance and health.
Yeah, man, excellent.
Right, so I can use the best and some very, very smart training techniques and train myself to the point of unhealth because I'm looking for performance. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying if you're a high performer, and I was at one time, if you're a super high performer, you're leaving health behind. And that's just a fact. You're pushing your body beyond where it would be naturally. And you have to do that to compete, and that's cool.
Right.
And it just so happens that people's competitive careers happen when they are younger, and if they're smart, after their competitive careers, they shift gears and move more into the health realm. Which, if I've done anything right in my life, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but that's one thing I got right. Right. I got that right. I realized without kind of intuitively knowing that, okay, this training cannot go on forever. I'm past my competitive career. Now I need to start focusing on the health aspects. Still utilizing the same tools. I'm still utilizing weights. I'm still training relatively heavy, but it's different. The intensity is a little bit less. The frequency is less. The volume is less. Everything's less. But I'm still a very, very healthy person now, and I'm an okay performer for being as old as I am. So I've been able to, and that's kind of my thing right now, is being able to ride that, the hairy edge between health and performance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm geared right now.
How would you define health then? What distinguishes that?
Yeah, so that's the $10,000 question, right? What actually is health? Well, the first answer is absence of disease, which that's a lame answer, right? But so the question comes up: okay, can you get if disease is absent, are you able then to get healthier? And I think that the answer to that is, Dan John makes this point. Trainer Dan John, a lot of your listeners might know of Dan John, a strength and conditioning coach, super, super cool guy. But he kind of states it, and I like this. So absence of disease, yes. But, is your kidneying correctly? Is your livering correctly? Are all your organs functioning correctly? Is your blood work dialed in? Is your thyroid operating well? Are you sleeping solid and long? Are you, a lack of headaches? Do you feel good? And I mean, that, in my estimation, is healthy.
This is an interesting thing because I don't know if you ever think about this, but I think about this all the time in the social realm, in the mental health realm, in the relationships and health realm. But something like happiness is this idea, because a lot of times we're so unhappy that we need to title it. Something like health is something that we need to title because we're so unhealthy now. Whereas if we were living in a more primitive lifestyle, and again, you said it, we're not recommending that we go in caves or anything like that, or don't have penicillin, or don't have, a needle and thread, but in how we use our bodies, how we stress ourselves, how we, sleep, these are some things that we were really made to be and evolved for millions. And I actually want to make this point because I talk about this in terms of social theory. We've had agriculture 10,000 years. We've probably had modern society for 2,000-3,000 years. If you look at human Homo sapien form, it's estimated, but 400,000 years, 300,000 years, humanoid form, millions of years.
Yeah.
If we took the Homo sapien form, that is one person for every 1,000 people. Our example of living in our society today, it's basically like if there was a representation of humanity that was 1,000 people, one of them is how we live now with the excess stress, with the diet, the way we, all that sort of stuff. And that same 1%, or that not 1%, 0.1%, has all the diseases of, cancer, which could have existed before, but not anywhere near on our level. Diabetes, and actually when we get into mental illness, there's a whole bunch of other stuff too. So it's a really interesting thing that paleo tied in. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you about health. It's like health wasn't an issue, or it wasn't a word back then in the way that we see it. It was a broken leg, or,
I guarantee if you go to hunter-gatherer societies that are, the few that still remain now, and you ask them what is health, they would look at you like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to what?
Yeah.
So they would, and I'm sure they would be, befuddled by the question.
Yeah.
You mean something as opposed to being dead?
Yeah.
You're either healthy or dead. I mean, that's kind of the two.
Of course there was infection. Like
sure.
You got a laceration. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these other very specific things that are now dramatic in our life.
When we talk about health, or lack thereof, when we talk about metabolic disease, ever how you want to define that, I would bet everything I own that they don't have a word for that.
Yeah.
There's no need to have a word for it.
And we're not trying to be doctors here or anything like this, but it's just, we know so many people and we talk to them. But, one of my friends, he's going to doctors. He should be going to doctors. He's got a form of MS. And I was like, man, just experiment a little. Here's Paul Jimenez's book, and check that out. See if you like it. And again, seek science. But one of my things is like, man, if you are not getting your diet right and getting the things that you can control, your sleep right, your point of reference and where to start and what medicine can do for you is going to be very, very skewed.
It is,
For a guy like me, I've done a lot of stuff with my diet, and still my blood pressure sits a little bit high. And I've gotten it lower, and I've done some bizarre, like very, it's almost like an unlivable form of diet. But,
sure.
But no, man, it's it's just such a key and important thing, and it's so hard to do. I mean, God, man, it's like pulling teeth to switch my diet, and it was like also pulling teeth to get my sleep patterns better.
Sure. Yeah. It's, for some people it's tough, right? Because, we live in a 24/7 society right now. So for somebody, sleep is huge. Let's just dive into sleep. You have so many other options at 9 o'clock at night to do rather than crash out, right? I mean, you being in Austin wakes up at 9 o'clock, right? I mean, that's just, and is that cool and is that fun? Yeah, absolutely. But is it healthy? So you have to come back to what do you want? And it's no difference than performance. Do you want to be an athlete? Awesome. Just realize that during this time, your health is going to take a hit. That's cool. But just realize that your health is going to take a hit. So we all have choices. And I'm not saying that anybody has to live like a monk to be healthy. And I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that the body can only handle so many stress hits. Some people can handle more than others. Some people can handle fewer than others. So I think the name of the game is to limit your stress hits on the body.
Yeah. So
if you're getting a lack of sleep, shitty diet, no exercise, those are huge. Plus you have a job that's like super, super, super stressful. I mean, your body has no relief anywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to start somewhere. Either get rid of the stress, get the diet dialed in, get your sleep right, and you start picking away at these things and do, the little bit that you can to start removing these hits from the body and let the body recover. And like I say, if you happen to be one of those unlucky ones that just happens to be not so resilient, maybe not a Wolverine, I mean, you're just going to have to double down on that stuff, and that's just the way it is. I'm kind of lucky in the fact that for whatever reason, my body can take a lot of abuse, but I still put a lid, especially on the things that I know really can kick my ass. Lack of sleep and stress are two things that can kick my ass. And so, anybody that knows me, I put a premium on sleep. The world could be crashing down around me, and I'm like, I'm outie, boom. And I have the ability to crash through it all. But I know if I don't do that, I'm ultimately going to be so ineffective later on to deal with whatever problems have come up. I'm going to be super ineffective because I'm just going to have that much hit on me. So you have to, know yourself.
Man, when I think about this, and when we think about even the history of like human culture, our sleep patterns have only been how they are now, which is all over the place whenever we want, and we could have options for 120 years.
Yeah, it's a product of the Industrial Revolution.
And for most of society, actually, most culture, because that was only in like the elite areas that could afford the electricity or were wired for it. But God, man, and so like 70 years, 80 years of that's just nuts to where we think that's the norm. And I think this is what gets a little bit crazy with finding that balance and really the finding the application to paleo or a primitive or melding that or moving more towards that paleo lifestyles. What I see a lot of people doing, and I've done it, man. I've done it like crazy, is I'll go like, all right, well, if I just push myself for 5 minutes a day or for 10 minutes a day, I can get what my body needs to be fit, but then I can squeeze in 15 more hours of work and, I could mix my sleep or I could, change my sleeping patterns to do to be more efficient. Whereas really there is a kind of like hard stop of like, no, sleep 8 hours or whatever it is your body tells you. Some people are different, but mine's actually a little bit longer now. But, sleep till you're rested and, use your body in how it was meant to be used, which it's all kind of a distortion of how we try and do that now. And try and eat healthy or eat, real food essentially is what I like to call it.
And really, I mean, if you have an aversion to the term paleo, I mean, eat real food. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Yeah. And there are, in our estimations, there are some real foods that are a bit dodgy. But if I could just give a blanket to, if everybody would just eat real food, including the foods that I would consider dodgy, I mean, metabolic disease would pretty much vanish.
Wow.
Oh, and if we threw in the exercise portion of that too, and that's really not a big change. It's more education than anything.
And when you say metabolic disease, what diseases would those be?
Well, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and then the real scourge now is obesity mixed with muscle loss. So you have sarcopenia as well as obesity, which is now muscle mass is metabolic currency. And this is where I was getting back to, if you have your exercise program dialed in, you can get away a little bit on the diet side of things. Not that I think that you should, but I think you can. And that's why my primary focus was with people is to get their exercise patterns dialed in first. If I had to put a focus on one thing, if somebody asked me, I can only focus on one thing at a time. Absolutely one thing. Okay, we're going to get your exercise program dialed in. We'll worry about diet later. Is diet important? Hell yeah, it's important. But if you're a person that can only focus on one thing, make one change at a time, I would focus on the fitness side of it. And I say this all the time. As a species, we were obligate movers and opportunistic feeders. And that's just the way I've looked at it. We had to, if you were going to survive at all, you had to be up building shelter, hunting, moving. Even if that meant moving away from being a lion dinner. You had to move. You had to be on the move. You had to function, and you ate whatever the hell you could shove down your pie hole. Essentially, it's just that up until 150 years ago, what you could get down your pie hole was real food.
Yeah.
No such thing as refined carbohydrates. There was no such thing as high concentrations of sugar with no fiber. All of these things that we have now that we have access to, we didn't have access to back then. So if it was not poisonous back in the day, and if we could chew it and swallow it, we ate it. Now, obviously, we made choices as a species to go after more palatable foods, and that meant meat and fat, because that's where the bang for the buck is. I mean, we knew that intuitively. Bang for the buck is in protein and fat.
Well, man, it's interesting because even with like all the paleo stuff, like broccoli didn't exist back then. Kale didn't exist. And they're all kind of like the same hybrid, right? Or they're hybrids of the same.
Don't get me going on. I'm not your vegetable expert.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's just our foods are different. Like our foods have been modified for size, flavor, what looks better. And actually it was interesting because I used to be a light designer in theater, and I was talking to somebody who sells LED lights in Austin, and they were actually saying that they're presenting to like Walmart and HEB because their light, it produces a broader spectrum, which is an interesting thing about LEDs. Whole other different thing, but it's a different physics. Like the light changes, so it makes the fruit or the vegetable look more green or more yellow or more red. And it's just so interesting. I was like, man, that's an excellent idea because that will totally up the sales for your produce, and your produce can be crap and it will look better. But man, it's just so interesting how our food comes is that it's been augmented so much, and because of that, nutrition is lacked, and then I guess soil depletion and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, soil depletion is huge. I'll just throw that out there. And one of the knocks against the paleo diet, so I've heard this argument before, you're kind of going along the lines of the vegetables being the hybrids of, those. So the same thing has occurred with the animals that we eat as well, right? So some of the critiques on paleo I've heard are, well, you can't go out and slaughter a mastodon anymore, so obviously you can't eat a paleo diet. And I mean, you have to come into this discussion with some bit of intelligence. Obviously, you cannot kill a mastodon, but does that mean you then go out and just load up on Twinkies?
Totally, yeah.
I mean, you see where I'm going with this. I mean, some of the critiques are just asinine. Asinine.
Yeah. So much changes. I'll tell you, like right now, I'm off of it. And we were talking about that because I'm prepping. I do stupid stuff, man, just because I know I'm about to do a challenge diet and fitness exercise. So, holidays ate, what was put in front of me, and then kind of continued as we're recording this in February, early February. And so I'm like, forget it. I haven't had bread in a while. Like I'm going to see what this tastes like. But man, let me tell you, like when my diet is tight, so like this is really crazy. So there's a couple things that I could say. If my diet's totally tight, like, and I'm eating meat and vegetables, some fruit, and just, and actually eating very little, my body's so efficient.
Yep.
If I put bread in my body or even eat like too much potato, like just too much of something that will turn into a sugar in my body, there's almost instant inflammation. Everybody's body is different, right?
Yep.
However, if I'm used to that, like right now, I'm eating, so it's actually not bad. I eat pretty freaking good, but putting some of those excess carbohydrates in my body, even refined carbohydrates in my body, I don't feel it, but I'm totally bloated. And this is what I want to tell people is like, I wake up in the morning and my body resets. I can feel it. I'm good. I'm lighter. My joints feel better. I just feel like I can move faster and I'm awesome. Put some butter in my coffee. I'm like, all right, I'm 100% today. And then like 3 p.m. comes along and it's like, let's eat some French fries or, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And it then immediately sets right back into that kind of dead weight feeling that becomes like a norm for us. And for guys who have not done a paleo diet or something where you're just eating real foods, like don't even worry about that. Just don't eat stuff with labels on them. And, man, you feel like how you feel in the morning all the time and then go better. And actually, I'll ask you this. When I'm about 3 or 4 months on a really tight diet, my body then plateaus. And I'm sure you run into this with training athletes and training different people. When you're working out at a certain pace or you're eating at a diet at a certain pace, what do you do when that plateau hits? When it stops, you start getting a little bit more lethargic with it or slowing down a little bit.
Yeah. So there's, so a lot of times what will happen is people will hit a plateau and they'll define a plateau by a body fat percentage, right? So they've used the paleo diet and they've leaned down to a certain point. So there's a couple things with that. Number one is they have a skewed version of what a normal body fat is, right? So you get your information on body fat levels. Well, if you're a guy, you look at the cover of like Men's Health or whatever, right? And you look at a bodybuilding contest or some form of advertisement. Yeah. And I can tell you, because I know a couple models that they diet down for that photo shoot and they can maintain that body fat level for a couple of days and that's it. And then they're back up and they look like a normal fit guy at about 10%, 11, 12% body fat.
Yeah.
And when they are fit and being a normal guy, there's no way they would be on a cover. And that plays the same for females too. So I also have access at the University of Texas, the department head who runs the DEXA scans at the University of Texas. And he has access to all the athletes. So what's interesting is, and I tell my female clients this all the time when they go in, I'm like, picture a collegiate sprinter, female sprinter. Think about what that body type looks like, how lean that is, how cut they are. And then I'll ask, what do you think their body fat percentage is? Of course, I always guess like around 12, 10%, which is ridiculous. Those girls are at 18, 19% body fat. Because the fact of the matter is, if a female drops below about 15% body fat, she stops menstruating. Now, can a female body be forced below 15%? Absolutely it can. And that just comes from manipulations of it. At that point, when you're trying to shove the body that low, it does become a calorie content battle. And it does require willpower at that point to just not eat. And obviously there's other pharmaceutical tricks that can help people get down to super low body fat. But I think, like when you're talking about it, I think the whole vision is just skewed because we're so inundated with advertising of what a fit body looks like. And
yeah, that's one of those weird cultural distortions, and it's such a new thing. Like, I honestly, when I back in, let's say, like 2012, I believe, maybe 11, when I really started to switch to a paleo diet, I just like instantly lost those weight because I was working out so much. I was already working out like too much. Or you actually we should get into this. There's no overtraining. There's just under recovery. Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
Kind of it's a little bit of an inflammatory statement, and I can back that up in a bit. But go ahead.
Yeah, man. So I just I lost all this weight almost instantly. I mean, like it took about 4-6 weeks or something, but then after that, it was just like it was just taking, all this stuff, and it was just crazy, man. It was like getting like too small, and I actually wasn't lifting then either. So, the muscle mass wasn't really I saw how little muscle I actually had, rather than the padding of fat around it. And man, during that whole time, I realized, I was like, wow, what image am I trying to get to? I don't even care anymore. Like, why? And that's a whole nother emotional thing that people got to sort out in their head, and get through. But it really made me realize, oh, this is how my body was meant to be. Okay. It's never going to be like that dude or this dude. And why am I chasing an image? And man, it's actually what I love about paleo, and maybe I can circle back to that later if we have time. But paleo for me really put together a philosophy that I've personally had since my teens about humanity, just in going back to a more primitive setting with all these social things and yada, yada, yada. But man, let's get into that. Like the overtraining thing. And let me just preface it with this. When you were talking about the image of bodybuilders, I was talking to one of my friends. He's a personal trainer in Austin. Excellent guy. Awesome dude. I actually want to interview him because he said something to me, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'd rather have him explain it because he was a competitive bodybuilder. He said, dude, there's so much insanity that I had to tap into about myself in order to do that it was unhealthy mentally for me.
Yeah.
And there was so much anger. And actually, I got to let him say it, but this is kind of what I interpreted from what he was saying. And he was like, man, I just want to be healthy. And so when we talk about that, he pushed himself to a point of overtraining, of over dieting, of caloric deficit, and taking different supplements and all sorts of shit. When we're trying to get in shape, I'll work myself, and as men, and maybe as women too, you can work yourself into a competitive psychosis, and I'll overtrain, get exhausted, get tired, won't be able to sleep, and have too much adrenaline in my body. Mm-hmm. What do you say about this overtraining under recovery type thing? Yeah,
so for most people, so without getting too technical, there's a term that's more adequate for the normal person, which is overreaching, right? When people actually get into the point of overtraining, you're usually talking about competitive athletes that have just pushed themselves without proper coaching, just pushed themselves over the edge. And that would include like adrenal, freaking complete burnout, thyroid shot, that whole line. When most people talk about overtraining, what they really mean is overreaching, which you could, classify as, severe fatigue, just that, I'm dead feeling, that kind of thing. But here's the thing with that. Most people don't train hard enough to ever hit the overreaching point. What they do is they under-recover. And remember when we talked earlier about the sleep and the stress and the adequate diet and all of those things, training is another stress on the body, and people fail to realize that. And I get this all the time because if I train no one else at efficient exercise, it is the type A, hyper type A lawyer. And they are blowing and going 24/7. And these are the people that set themselves up for that, because obviously they're in a super stressful job. They don't sleep because they're working 16 hours a day. They eat here and there. I mean, it's pretty tough to get them, on the paleo or real food reservation. And so now their workouts are one additional stress on their body. And so what happens is people will start throwing this additional stress without trying to take care of the other stuff. Now, the body can more than handle a very, very high level of workout stress if you get the other stuff under control. And that's where the recovery part comes in. So when I say there is no such thing as overtraining, it's under recovery, that's what I mean. What I mean is you don't have the rest of your life dialed in to then add that additional stress on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is, because if you did have that other stuff dialed in, you could work out like a fiend and never overtrain.
Like it's crazy. I haven't actually been on the mats in a while, but doing jiu-jitsu. And if I train, God, man, there were so many different experimentations I would try and do. But a lot of times I'd get really into it. And being 37, there'd be like these 25-year-olds that would do CrossFit. They'd do like 3 hours of jiu-jitsu, like hard, and all in the same day. And I'm like, man. But at the same time, I think a 25-year-old's body, and everybody's 25-year-old body is a little bit different, but these guys, just had it, right?
Sure,
that will not sustain. But also they're probably resting and getting the proper whatever. I also know guys that train like animals and still drink soda and eat a bunch of crappy stuff. Man, for me, I'm actually kind of grateful that I can't do that. If I train like 1 or 2 hours on the mat hard, man, I have to have 8-9 hours of sleep. Yeah. If I'm lifting as well within that, it's probably best if it's on another day or there's like a substantial amount of rest in between. And, for me, working out like 2-3 times a week is more than enough. Depends on what it is. So
everybody's got to find that point. The amount of workout stress that I can handle now is not what it was when I was 25.
Yeah.
But then I look back, when I was at it, well, probably earlier for me. I started having kids pretty early and had to get out and earn money. But I think back to like what my training was like in college when I played college football, and it was murderous. Yeah. But I didn't have. What did I have stress-wise other than that?
Yeah.
I mean, I slept, I got a hell of a lot of sleep. It wasn't like I was a star student, so I wasn't really stressed about school. I had zero others. I mean, zero. My housing was taken care of. We had laundry. I didn't even have to worry about doing my laundry. Meals, I just show up and eat. I mean, there was zero stress outside of training stress. That was it. Yeah, I could handle a hell of a lot. Yeah. Trying to run a business. I wasn't trying to do this, that, trying to juggle 4 different businesses and stay afloat, make sure the kids are fed, make sure the mortgage is paid. You see, now that's a hell of a lot of stress that I can't put. You can consider the body a big bucket that can hold so much stress.
No, you actually got a lot going on. You know what's crazy about the body and about men in their journey of actually, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
50.
Man, this guy has so much muscle mass on him. It's insane. It's pretty phenomenal. Wow, 50 and your body fat percentage is what?
It's about 11%. Yeah.
11?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gotten there.
By DEXA scan, and so that's that's a good set point for me.
Yeah, on a DEXA, to just let everybody know, if you're getting your calipers done, it's much different on a DEXA. It's not as forgiving.
Yeah, you can't run and hide from a DEXA. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's one of the most accurate readings for body composition you can get. I mean, you can get an MRI scan, but I mean, for the normal person, the DEXA scan is, I mean, it's way far and above calipers.
Internal body fat to tell you what's in the arm, what's in the leg. It's crazy. Yeah. But I mean, God, and just put in perspective, at 13 or 14% body fat for me via DEXA scan, you see my leg muscles. You see, it's not bodybuilder, but I mean, it's like I have cut definition. But man, that all being said, and it's not just about body fat, but that's a good point of reference, I think, to go for.
Yeah.
Man, like, it's so interesting because the older you get, the stronger your mind becomes. It's gone through more battles. It's gotten beaten up. It knows when to be humble. It knows when to fight. But your body does change. And for any sport, there's like usually like mountaineers, they get better, not when they're old, but in their 30s, even into their 40s. I see it also with fighters that don't take too much trauma. Of course, a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 22-year-old is going to be a phenomenal athlete. But the wisdom that can come into play with that, I think, usually, your body's not as fast, it's not as strong, but there's something else going on that still has that will. And I think that's a tough thing, especially if you're pushing it like a lawyer or you're an entrepreneur and you want to get in shape. You think more, going harder, going faster is the way to go. And a lot of times it's about being smarter. And that's a hard, the ego's a hard thing to put down when it's
smart, and it's being efficient too.
Yeah.
It's being efficient and being effective. And really what it comes down to is cutting away the excess and cutting away the fat. All of us have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
All of us. And so you just have to get very, very smart about how you divvy up that 24 hours.
Man,
I think if I've gotten better or wiser, as I've gotten older, I've been a good manager of my day. And I've been able to train hard. And now, I've been doing this, almost 40 years training wise. So I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And I know where the meat is in a workout, right? So I'm not doing tricep kickbacks with dumbbells or, I know what I need to do and what's effective. And I think that helps me spend less time in the gym. And, it's not wasting my energies that I need to be putting towards business pursuits and recovery.
Man.
So that's...
You do a lot. Like, talk about stress, efficient exercise, the ARX Fit, the Paleo FX. God, you just have a lot of things going on. Man, let's talk about Paleo FX. You've been doing it 4 years. What was the overall vision and what does it become?
So, I've told this story a couple times. So Michelle and I don't know if your listeners know about the Ancestral Health Symposium. So the Ancestral Health Symposium is the very, very academic side of what we do in the paleo community. So this is where the scientific papers are presented. This is an academic conference, where ours is more for the layperson, where the rubber meets the road. My wife, Michelle, and I went to the inaugural AHS, which was in Los Angeles, 2011, I believe it was.
And who puts on the Ancestral Health Symposium?
So it's a 501c, and it is a committee, an academic committee that actually puts this on. Ancestral Health Society is actually who puts it on.
Okay.
So Michelle and I went to this conference. It was a fantastic conference. It was very, very academic. Yes, it was very deep. A lot of knowledge put out. Long story short, we had a fantastic time at this conference, and we were getting ready to head back to Austin. And we're sitting on the tarmac at LAX, and we're just kind of debriefing a little bit and talking about what an awesome conference it was, but that, like, for me, none of my clients would have gotten anything out, and nothing. It would have been so far over their heads, they would have been lost, right? So we were talking about that, and we're like, yeah, it would be really, really cool to, like, take that knowledge and dumb it down to the point to where the common guy could get it. So, I get questions like, what do I eat for breakfast? What's a good source of carbohydrates? It sounds like you're really down on carbohydrates. Well, what's a good source of carbohydrates then? Questions like that people need. And these are intelligent people. I mean, they're, entrepreneurs, doctors, attorneys, the type people I train. They just don't have time to dig into the minutia that I do. They expect me to do that. That's why they pay me. So anyway, that's where the whole idea of Paleo FX started. Okay, well, let's do that. Let's get together a couple people, and we were actually going to have the first one at an efficient exercise studio, which is, to me, now that is just completely freaking laughable. How small we intended to start. And now, this year, we will have the entire Palmer Center in Austin. I don't know if any of your listeners have been to the Palmer Center. It's immense. It is huge. And we're able to fill that entire venue for 3 days.
And let's put things in perspective too, because when Paleo FX first came around, I remember you guys were talking about it, and I heard about it, obviously interested in it, and I know you, so I'm like, this could be interesting. But at the time, Rob Wolf's podcast, huge, right? Huge. And still is, Marxist and Mark Daly's Mark's Daily Apple, tremendously popular blog. And now there's so many different paleo things and whatnot. But, I remember, Mark was basically like, hey, or no, not Mark, Rob was like, hey, I'm going to be at this conference. And I was listening to the podcast and I was like, oh my God, wow. And it just started moving and happening, and God, man, just built and built and built. And now it's this huge event where literally it's the standard, like all the paleo guys come and talk. Everybody that has anything to do with paleo will be there. All the big names. And and I should say too, that it's not just a diet conference. And Totally.
So we have a huge S&C floor. We have everybody from Olympic lifters coming out, Dutch Lowy, Eva Twardokins, people who are on the fringes of the diet, or who might not even, they just eat a real food diet and they don't worry about it. Paleo is not their thing, but they're super into the strength and conditioning. We bring those people in. Panels on shamanism and psychedelics. That's part of the human experience, and we want to dig into that. So is it about diet? Yes, but it's about the whole human experience.
Well, I want to talk about this because I think it's moving in this direction. I remember last year, I forget the guy's name, the guy who wrote Sex at Dawn.
Chris Ryan.
Yeah, he was like, I'm going to be at the Paleo FX in Austin. Hit me up or something, or you say that maybe on the Rogan podcast or something. He's
a cool guy. Real cool
guy. But his message is a little bit different, but this ties in everything together. And even when I was like 17, 18, and actually now this book is required reading, but it's this book called Ishmael, and it talks about all this social theory and a lot of Richard Dawkins references on, when we have population dense societies and when we're overstimulated. It's so interesting because, and even at my 21 convention speech this last year, well, Skylar was there. It was in Tampa. I was talking about this idea that when we are in deficit, for the things that we were born to be, which is food, paleo made the best argument for this. I remember talking to people in my early 20s about this. They're like, what are we going to go live in caves? About kind of like this theory of hey, we were really born to live emotionally, socially, mentally, physically in this different way. And this is all this weird distortion. And that's why we have all these problems. And it's easy to get in the blame game and be like in your early 20s and talking about some theoretical thing that, you can't put into a way of life. But paleo did that diet-wise, and I see it moving into, because paleo, it's like, well, this is how we socialize. And actually, James Steele, his speech at the 21 convention and at the Ancestral Health Symposium this last year was about, well, paleo, talks about we can't sit, we've got to stand, and all this stuff. And he's like, look, there's not a lot of evidence towards that. And even at tribal cultures that we see now, there's a lot of sitting. Apes, there's a lot of sitting, there's a lot of resting, and socializing for young kids was playing, but as adults there was like a more of a decompression and a talking. And I was like, dude, James, man, this is awesome because my speech is hitting on this. But I don't want to make this about me because I'm just borrowing theories that come from a whole bunch of other people. But man, I would really like to see where paleo goes in the next couple of years. And you're one of the guys that really brought this together of where it's going to go with all that social theory, because, man, there's a lot of people who are talking about it in not really having dialogue with you guys yet that I know of, and hopefully they are, but talking about addiction, talking about psychological problems, talking about different mental illness, and not to minimize those. And if you have those problems, man, see a professional who is trained with it. But there's a lot of evidence how this way we live is, causes extra stress, We're not being fed with what we were born to need emotionally, mentally, physically. And when we're in distress physically, we become malnourished and we can become fat, we can become emaciated, we become diseased. And when we are malnourished with our emotions, with our need for socializing and even our need for sex and our need for connection, we get all out of shape. And we see this with the guys in the seduction industry. You're saying athletes overperform and then don't become healthy.
Yeah.
Well, there's all these guys or girls or whatever searching for an image, searching for a validation. What is masculinity? What is femininity? It's this, that, chasing it and not getting the benefits of health. And that's why I ask you, like, what is health? Absence of disease. Well, what is social and sexual health? What is mental health? Absence of disease.
Yeah.
Resentment, anger, blame. These aren't things that were really even seen. And it's hard to note that, but even in tribal culture, do we see that? You know, and of course we don't want to go live like the dudes in New Guinea and do all the weird, crazy stuff they're doing or whatever. Yeah. But man, there isn't jealousy there. There isn't like, you know, and what happens when populations get too dense? What happens when people start getting cut out? What happens when compartmentalization and labeling happens? Your brain shapes in a different way. And so if people can know the potential of their bodies, that was the first message that I heard from Paleo. But what seems to be happening is if people can notice the potentials of their emotional range, who they are, how they think, and how they have relationships with people, I think we can move it into something that that goes a little bit beyond, you know.
For sure, yeah. And you know, the whole point of Paleo is not to put a halt on progress. I mean, you want to progress. I mean, we as a human species have done nothing but progress, and I think it's hardwired into us. And I mean, this can get into a whole philosophical, spiritual direction, but we as a species are not meant to sit idle.
Yeah.
I mean, and when we talk about sending astronauts to Mars, colonization of Mars, the only way we can do that and to ship this human container and put it in such an environmental mismatch is Mars. We better know where we came from. Right?
Yeah. Crossing an ocean, though, man.
Yeah.
Think about that. God.
I mean, so you better know what this machine needs. And what this machine needs is fuel. What it needs is exercise. What it needs for mental stability, sexual stability. That all of that is part of the human experience, and that is what we cover at Paleo FX. And that is what we need to be able to leverage the proper technologies to move us along.
Man,
that's
you know
what it's all about.
It's funny because years ago I heard on a podcast with Rogan, and he was like talking about ambition. You know, he just goes off on stuff, and he's like, "Man, don't you think it's kind of dangerous? Like ambition can be bad." And so one of my groups, and one of my men's groups, we workshopped this for months, and we really came up with this: like, man is meant to pursue, or I don't know if meant, because, and I think when you and I are talking about Paleo or whatever, I'm not trying to put rules on any of this. Like there's no one set way, like, but how we're living now and what we think it is really not, it's too complex and too oversaturated with so many different things. But I'm not talking about regulation. I'm not talking about enforcement. I don't think that's the nature of humanity, but ambition is just this pursuit of wanting something better. And humans will always do that. As soon as we could cross a desert, and that was death. Yep. I mean, you want to talk about millions of years, we did not do that. Yep. You know, an ice age actually happened in between all that before we could actually cross those areas. But man, you know, as soon as we could, we did. Like, it's just nuts. As soon as we had the capabilities to do that. And when we talk about space and different explorations, I don't know what's going to happen, but man wants to pursue. The interesting thing is if we have insecurity, if we have doubt, if we have thoughts of less than, then ambition turns into an expression of that. And I think that's where it gets dangerous for people. And our pursuits start to become a war with us not being good enough, or I got to be this or fit this image. But your natural thing within you, and I think this is important for guys to get, is to, hey, man, go out and look, go out and explore. It's truly your nature.
It is, yeah.
And when you think about how the brain works, if I'm out hiking and I've been in a trail that I've been on before, you know, I'm just like, okay, cool. You know, time goes by at normal time pace. if I hit on a new side of that trail or an area that I haven't been, time slows down. I become more observant. My mind opens up in different ways. And, if I go to like the hack side, like human engineering sort of way, I'm like, I'm going to do that as much as possible. How do I systematize this in my life? But if I just see that as like, maybe that was probably a natural expression of how my brain was meant to work, the more I can have unique experiences and see things in the moment rather than try and manufacture them, I tend to be a lot happier.
Yeah. It wakes your senses up too.
Yeah, man. No, I think paleo, the thing I love about paleo and what you've brought to the table with it, with the Paleo FX and bringing everybody together, is that it's turned into this pursuit of how we can really be happy on all different levels. It was so cool just at the 21 convention, which is not Paleo FX, which is not the ancestral movement symposium. But there is a faction of it there. People were talking about relationships. People were talking about how they interact. People were talking about, the science between it and the social theory behind it. And it was just very cool. And I just can't wait till, there's a lot of different kind of a crazy dude. Wilhelm Reich had a lot that he thought about this, but he was also kind of nuts. There's just, Dawkins and these different guys had just so many different theories on what is happening, and even some of the more modern thoughts on addiction and mental illness and all this sort of stuff. I just see it coming together in a good way. Dude, you said that there's like some shamanic guys coming to talk. Yes. Everybody loves hearing about that. Just give us a little taste of what.
Yeah. So without letting the total cat out of the bag. So a couple of friends of mine will actually be landing in Austin from a 10-day ayahuasca trip in Peru. Mm-hmm. So they'll be getting right off the plane right after. I think they've got like 7 ayahuasca ceremonies during that 10-day period. So they ought to be ripe for some good stories. But the question about shamanism, right? This has been part of the human experience, as far as we know, as long as there has been a human experience. Right. There has always been that element that has made us human, and it's this isn't a religious type of expression, but there's something there.
Totally,
there's something inherent to that other world or whatever you want to call it that needs to be studied, because I think it's absent in today's society. So just as we're undernourished food-wise, we're undernourished in that realm too, because now there's so many cultural biases set up around it. There's so much stigma that's wrapped around religion as we know it now. So as best we can understand the roots of it and what it is from that experience that we need, I think we need to understand that, and we need to study it. I just find it, and on the psychedelic realm, I just find it very, very interesting that we went for millions of years and made very, very, very little progress. 100,000 years to figure out one new angle on a spear tip. And then 50,000 years ago, something happened that just exploded creativity, from the point where you went from a spearhead to putting a man on the moon in 50,000 years. That is incredible when you look at the other part of human evolution, that it took all that time to get to the spearhead.
Man, even agriculture.
Something happened.
It's nuts. It's so crazy, and how many things happened in sync historically. But I think human beings, and check this out. So this is all speculation. I'm no expert, but in the little bit I've studied about anthropology, and I've, like I said, in my early 20s, I looked at a lot of books that were not necessarily paleo-esque. They were more on like the social theory, and actually Saharasia, an amazing book on just how people came about, and a lot of crossover with paleo. But we've always told stories. We are social animals. That's what kept us alive. Like, this is actually what I really think is so irresponsible about a lot of people talking about who are selling, like in the dating and seduction industry, that has a huge part in the 21 convention. That's my thing. But they'll say, you know, social proof, the king had women around him. We didn't have kings. Like, we didn't have like warriors. We didn't have like, people may have fought, but there was nobody with the identity of that. You know, Sparta was one of the first times where they had warriors. Like, this is what you do and all you do. And there may have been stuff before that or whatever, but it just wasn't a huge part of humanity.
Yeah, it's a relatively new invention in the whole human timeline. Yeah. It really, I mean, when you look at it in relation to, again, the difference between the spearhead and putting the man on the moon was nothing compared to what it took to get to that spearhead.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at timelines, and the same thing could be said of, you know, the warrior class and the king's class, and I mean, these are relatively new,
very
cultural inventions.
Yeah, man. But what brought us together was story and wondering about how we are and were. And, you know, of course, recorded history is very young, right? But, man, our urge was to see that person.
Yep.
And a lot of times we say, no, our urge was to be afraid of him. I'm sure we were totally afraid when we saw a new person. It was, oh, fuck, man. But what pretty much had to happen for us to survive was to merge with that person or that group. And that was huge. And what made us do that, and what made us identify with us and with it, and give us our identities and fulfill us in different ways, was who we are in our history. And I think human beings, when they naturally come together, especially in smaller groups, define that very well. Mm-hmm. We're just made for it. If you just spit, even city people, you know, industrialized people, whatever. But the sad thing is now the more people we have, the bigger walls, the bigger our fences, the more establishment of property, and even these ideas of property establishment. And you've actually written about this. You know, it's like, hey, I'd love to have a kind of like a commune type area where people could.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's natural for the human condition to be in you know, tribes of, I don't know, less than 100, right?
Totally.
When you get people in a city, I mean, it's just too much.
And even man, this is like way back when, but like 12 years ago, I interviewed Jared Diamond, the Guns, Germs, and Steel guy. And it was like, even at 100 people, there's consistent splits that happen of leadership, and that does get divided, and classes start to move around. But
there is, and I can't recall the number right offhand.
Totally,
about 100, but you know what I'm saying? Small groups are what we're designed to live in.
Yeah. Man,
small like-minded groups. So
yeah, no, man, I would love to see things go in that direction in this crazy world of what we have going on now, because I'm not going backwards.
Yeah, that's all part of it, right? So if we understand that, okay, well, we as humans, we get along really, really good. Say in a group of 25, we get along really, really good. We start getting bigger than that, we need to split off. Well, I mean, we don't need to fight that.
Yeah.
We need to somehow incorporate that into the fabric of our society.
Yeah.
And use that. We've got the information, let's use it.
Totally.
And, you know, that may mean like totally recreating society or you know, the patchwork. But we need to be moving that direction instead of trying to fight it.
Awesome.
So, and you know, it's cliched, but knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
So utilize the knowledge as best you can. I mean, we all want a wonderful living experience, right? And so paleo and these ideas of group dynamics, all of this makes for a better living experience.
Man, so I know you have to catch a plane, but if somebody shows up at the Paleo FX and they come in there, you know, they go to the site, they look at it, what can they expect from being inundated with all this information, different speakers, different presentations? But I think there's more to it than that. Yeah. What's going to happen?
So we were just talking about the human dynamic, the human need to want to get together as a common group. Paleo FX is it. I mean, this is the one time a year where everybody with this like-minded vision of looking through an evolutionary lens to propel ourselves forward, everybody is under one roof at one time. It is just a phenomenal experience. And I don't want to take anything away from the speakers, right? I mean, we have over 100 speakers at anybody who's everybody in paleo. 5 concurrent stages going on the whole time.
Oh my God.
Talks, masterminds. I mean, you will be just information overload. We film everything so everybody will be able to purchase the films afterwards. So, you know, you can only watch one talk at a time, but you'll be able to purchase, all the talks will be recorded. But you hear it in every time when you talk to somebody about the experience. It was the networking opportunities and being able to get together as a group. Everybody has such a fantastic time at this, and it's a paleo party. I mean, and people will group up after. Austin is a beautiful place in the spring. I mean, it's one of, you ask anybody who goes there or who has been, and this is the highlight of the year for their travels, and the ability to get together with like-minded people and discuss these issues. And
also it's grown on such a massive level. So clearly, I mean, like, people are coming for something, man. How many days and how many people are expected to come?
So it's over 3 days, the 24th through the 26th of April in Austin. And there'll be over 1,500 people there.
God, that just sounds amazing.
It is, yeah. And, you know, we had no idea that Paleo FX would turn out like this. None. I mean, in our wildest dreams, you never anticipated this. And right now it is, and really the burden of this is on Michelle, because I've got the ARCS Fit and the efficient exercise thing to take care of. So unfortunately, you know, Mark and I at Alexander at Efficient Exercise were like, wow, this is getting really out of hand. It's all we kind of put it off, and it's taken it and just really molded this thing into a first-class symposium.
Man,
she's done a wonderful job with it. We keep, you know, bringing in new blood every year. So that just this paleo idea is just flowering across the nation and across the world, to where now it's being applied to so many other different disciplines. I mean, it's crazy, and it's a wild roller coaster ride, and, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I mean, geez, just think, like, this happened 4 years ago, and, you know, all the paleo stuff started to get big, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Yeah. But man, as soon as Time Magazine put that piece of butter on the cover, you were like, wow. You
know, for instance, I'm flying out to Pensacola. Michelle's flying to San Diego to do a couple of shows out there. So it's the interest in what is paleo is just exploding into the mainstream, right? And I think if we have any, Michelle and I being in the position that we are, if we have any duty, it is to try to explain what it is about paleo that makes it so effective. And really, that's what we talked about today. Yeah. What is it that makes it effective? It's not going back to a cave and spear and saying, you know, halt to progress. Hell no, we do want to progress.
Yeah.
If you want to go, you know, me going to this symposium that's in Pensacola, this is all about space flight. How do we keep an astronaut healthy for 6 months, 6 to 9 months, while they're being transported to Mars? And the only way to do that is to consider that question through an evolutionary lens.
Yeah.
Because we are evolutionary beings. I mean, we were born in the crucible of evolution, and we have to consider that if we're going to talk about such an environmental mismatch between where we are here and space.
Awesome.
That's the kind of leverage Paleo FX can have, and that's what we intend to do.
Man, I can't wait to see it. It'll just be like a phenomenal thing.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. I train all year for Paleo FX because it's 3 days of blowing and going.
I don't know how you can manage all that. I don't know how. I mean, even if Michelle's helping you like that, or, you know, maybe she's carrying a lot of that's her. Insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
Insane. God.
But it's cool. Fun. Like I said, we would have it no other way.
Yeah, man. I know you got to get going on the plane and all that stuff. This was an amazing podcast. I think maybe next time when we have you back, hopefully sooner than later, you can talk about the entrepreneur development of that, because that's just nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy.
That's a whole other topic, because it is, you know, if you would have asked me 4 years ago, before we went into this, that I would be involved, and Michelle and I both would be involved in something like this, we would have we would have said, you're crazy. None of us have any experience in doing this kind of thing. And so it was, I'll just say this, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but for both of us, it took a huge set of freaking huevos to go out and do something that was totally out of our wheelhouse.
When I first met you, you guys had efficient exercise in a smaller area. There were a lot of gyms like that in Austin, or just around the world. And not to make it sound small, and you were saying like, hey,
no,
there's only sweat and tears in this. We will teach you how to pump iron in whatever way. If I have a pull-up bar, if I have a dumbbell, if I have this amazing piece of machinery, ARX Fit, I can do it. And you're still that same guy. It's just, God, putting on this amazing major event that's influencing so many people. That's just such a cool thing.
Thanks. And I would encourage all of your listeners to come, even if you have no idea what paleo is, or even if you're like, I don't agree with that, with the paleo diet. I mean, certainly you agree with looking at things through an evolutionary lens, and I guarantee you come out there and you see that again, that we are looking to progress society and not regress. You'll get a hell of a lot out of it, and a hell of a lot that you can apply in any discipline, whether that's entrepreneurship, relationships, whatever, and make you a better human being.
Awesome. Good stuff, Keith. Hey, you had a good time talking to the folks at NASA. That's awesome. And man, we'll see you at Paleo FX, if not sooner.
Right on. We'll see you on the trip to Mars. How about that?
All right. Awesome,
all right, man. Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends about it, leave a comment, get involved in this discussion. Because the reason why we bring you all these speakers, we host these events, we put out this amazing content and bring this discussion to the forefront is so that every man, every person watching this knows their true potential, knows that the ideal man is sitting within them. And all it needs is a community, a network, a voice to guide it along the way and bring it out. Thank you so much for supporting. Be a part of the dialogue, and we'll talk to you guys soon.